The Predalien seems to be in pretty bad shape. Here's a look at the new Hiya toys, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, the Exquisite Mini, a battle-damaged Predalien. Exquisite Mini is a new standard setting series for 1/18 scale, featuring super articulation action figures under Hiya toys. Battle damaged or not, the Predalien was still the coolest thing about Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Before we get a closer look at the Exquisite Mini of the new battle damaged variant of the Predalien, I'd like to thank the folks over at Hiya Toys that did provide the sample of the AVPR Predalien battle damaged version that we could have a look at in this video. For the obvious reasons, I'm also going to bring in a second the other Predalien so you can see the differences between the two. You may look at this and just think it's cosmetic paint, and that's the thing that changes between the two figures. There is one other thing that they have actually done differently, and I'll give you a clue. It has something to do with its head. While you're trying to decipher that riddle, let's go ahead, grab and tape measure now just to see how tall the figure stands. And like the case before, battle damaged Predalien is about 4.5 inches in height, or it's just about 11 centimeters tall. Do excuse me for a second while I just slide over the battle-damaged version Predalien, and I bring in the original Predalien that we looked at before. Both cases I would recommend that if you use the display stand, of course it comes included with the figure anyways, but make use of that, because of the way the feet are designed accurate, at least to the movie, but it does cause problems when it comes to these figures to stand, and thank goodness it has a long enough bendable tail that's the thing that's kind of keeping the figures from falling over right now. And of course, while we have a little bit of space also in the middle, bookend on both the sides, in the middle, there's the unmasked wolf predator, a figure we also just recently had a look at here. No, nothing new gets added that wasn't already packed with the earlier Predalien. This figure also comes included with the same display stand, the same eye brackets, and the same pair of swappable hands. Backtracking a little bit, let's look first at the display stand. It's the same steel-graded display stand as we've gotten countless times before, with a brushing of silver paint across the surface. One singular peg can attach to either one of the feet of the Predalien. I do feel in a case like this, as mentioned in the earlier Predalien review, I think that they should have really included 2 of these. When you get to the bigger sized aliens, like Alien Queen had multiples of these stands, and yet Predalien only got 1 of them. You get eye brackets, work the same way as all the times we looked at before. These eye brackets fit into the slots on both the sides, this side, and this side, to get us something that looks like this. I had this all prepared off to the side. Now, this is actually what I was using for the time being with displaying my Predalien. As you see, I alternated or flipped around the pegs so that they were on the opposite side so I get a wider stance from the Predalien. I again personally feel like Hiya Toys should have included in a case like this more than 1 display stand instead of just the 1. But, again, if to get this effect, all I've done is simply just use those eye brackets, the ones that come included with the figure, and I just attached them on the inside here, and then I've taken 2 display stands, although the colors weren't completely accurate to one another. This one's a little bit more darker, and I just simply attached the 2 together. Now, again, for how many you have of these, simply just can continue on your merry little way this way, or this way, or this way. I've had actually a couple of ones on my shelf that actually are displayed like this, sort of like a 7. That way I can have a figure over here and have a figure like maybe battling. I could put Wolf over here, for example, and then I could put the Predalien along the top. Love the idea that, again, you get like the idea of adding more and more display stands, depending on how many figures you actually have of Hiya. We're going to put those to the side. The figure also comes included with the same swappable hands as before. Now, these hands are simply just gripping hands to the ones that are currently on the sockets of his forearms. Let's go ahead and pick that up right now. To show you the difference between the two, I'm going to go ahead and grab a little bit slippery in my hands. One, as you can see, is the gripping hand. One is a more relaxed hand. And simply all you do is just pop the hand off the peg. I'll go ahead and just wiggle this off right now, like that. And then you can just go ahead and pop the new hand in place. I don't want to say it's super easy. It's not hard, but it's certainly with the sense of having to fit that onto such a small peg. You can imagine it's going to be a little bit more difficult just because you don't want that to fall off. So such a small little hand like that will be lost right away. That's what it looks like, just the difference between the two. The more relaxed hand on the one side, the gripping hand on the other. Now, I did say at the beginning that there was a difference beyond just cosmetic paint. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of paint already on the face and the body here. This is likely predator blood, or predalien blood in this case. You can see it's all over the poor face of the predalien. It's all across its dreads. It's all across its torso, its arms, and all its lower abdomen area there as well. But there is also one change that they have made with this figure that wasn't already on the original. And for that, I'm going to bring in the other figure so you can see. If anybody wants to take a guess as to what that may be. No, it's not the shape of the head. The head seems to be the same. The dreads are also placed in the same spot, although again, this one has the green, this one does not. No, what the difference between the two is the mandibles. If you look at the mandibles on the regular release of Predalien, they're further apart, whereas this one right here actually has the mandibles closer together. I like that. I like that they didn't simply just take the same figure, as good of a mold as it was already, and not just add paint to it and just call it battle damage. But at least there's something a little bit different between the two figures. Personally, for me, I kind of like the actual mandibles being out like this, especially if you're then to take the mouth and open it up. It looks like he's ready for battle. Whereas this one, maybe I will display this one on the shelf with its mouth closer together, similar to the way that the mandibles are also closer together. But that seems to be the only thing that's really changed between the two figures. As I certainly spin this around, the tails are certainly getting intermingled with one another. You can see on the back, even, like the tubes that stick out from the back of the body are identical to one another. The tail is the same, the legs are the same, everything is the same except for, again, those little mandibles. We're going to go and move this one out of the way because, of course, we've already covered him off quite a lot in the earlier review of him. Still, though, despite the fact that most of this figure is simply just the same remolding of the one that we got before, other than the fact that they have changed to have more close together mandibles, it does make for a really, really nice looking figure still. Like the one we looked at already, it does have an open and closed mouth. And like the one before as well, if we just get this little small jaw to come out, it's quite a long jaw. It takes up at least this much real estate space on the inside cavity of its head, and it makes for a much longer reach, because of course this is the way it impregnates. It's a very long inner mandible, inner little tiny jaw. It's a little more on the looser side, and that's probably one of the reasons why it falls out as frequently as it does. But for me at least, I'm going to tuck this as far in as I can get it. For me at least, I'm going to be likely displaying, I think, the mouth closed to go along with the mandibles on the sides. Paint on this one again is really, really good. It does have, of course, the now introduction of the fluorescent green, which does pop a lot on this really nice looking mold existing already. But I gotta say, even just the stock colors that they used before was the one thing I really liked about this figure, was just all the nice use of the beiges, the browns and stuff like they've added. Little speckles there along the surface. And again, you got that dark crest along the top area of its head as well. It does have the clear dome, like we looked at already before, although this one's a little harder to make out the skull inside, simply because this one does have now the blood splattered across. It does look like it also has some claw marks there, also on the front of its face there too. Again, a lot of it is just cosmetic paint, but again, by adding different mandibles, at least you don't feel like it's simply just a repaint. Body is just as good as we looked at before. Again, I love the clear coat finish that they've added to this. It does have, once again, a wireframe tail, so if you are somebody that's reluctant to use a display stand, you can easily bend the tail and usually use that as just a supporting crutch. And that seems more than enough to keep it upright, but I like to have it more in a gestured pose or more of a dynamic pose that I would always then use still the display stand, even if the tail is wireframed as it is. If I was to straighten out the tail, I want to show you just how long of a reach this is. That's got to be I would say two of the Predaliens long. And as you can see, it's got some really good coloring going for it. It's got some beige, it's got the nice browns. And along the top, the spikes that stick out the top of its tail are, again, all that kind of dark, very dark, blackish brown. It's not quite black. It's not quite brown. It's kind of something in between. The top, or the tubing itself, is also on these little ball joints, so you can actually move these around. That's one thing I also like as well. They could have easily just made that as part of the mold and not even added any little bit of articulation, but the fact that they actually put in little ball joints on the tubes is a really nice touch on Hiya's part. For the articulation here on the Predalien, it's going to be the exact same as the one we looked at already. The head does swivel back and forth. It's on a ball joint. You can move the head down only by a little bit. You can also move it up. And technically, of course, we can also count the fact that the jaw does open and close. And of course, not that I would consider this to be articulation, but like the little tiny chopper also does slide out. For the arms do move back and forth. You can also move them out. I did notice on this arm was a little more on the tighter side, so I'm probably going to have to take a hairdryer pass just to heat that and soften that up a little bit. But Once you do soften it, it seems like I can easily pull off, say, a 90-degree angle bend. You can still move the arms back and forth this way. The elbows are a little more on the tighter side on this figure. I think the other figure was also pretty tight too. There is a joint, but it's a joint that you really almost have to fight with. There's actually two joints right there, 1 and 1. But I would certainly recommend, if you have any aspects of these figures when you first get them out of the packaging that are tight, don't force the joint, whatever you do, especially the joint being this small as it is. I would probably first heat this. You don't have to use the hot water trick. You can certainly just use a hairdryer if you want. A few passes will probably be enough to soften that plastic that you can get the joint to move. For the upper torso, it is on a ball joint, although it's just a really, really tight ball joint. There's no articulation essentially from here to here. Well, here to here, as this is just continued sculpt. The legs, however, though, swivel back and forth. You can move the legs out only just by a little bit because it's got these larger kind of sculpted parts to its thigh. That does prevent a little more of the limitations to the articulation on the figure. The figure does have a double hinge on the knee like before. And then there's, again, that articulation hinge on the ankle. You're not going to get much leeway, though, when it comes to the ankle articulation. And again, even though it is accurate to the movie, you can see like the way that it takes up very little of a footprint. It sort of has a high heel strut up the top here that gives them a little less of a footprint, a little less of a footprint to actually get it displayed properly. So like I said, for a case like this, I'm usually inclined to display. Let's just first of all bend the tail so he's going to stand a little bit better. Even though you can rest against the tail, the best thing for me at least is to recommend attaching it by the display stand. Just simply, again, take it and just put it onto the peg. There's little peg holes right there, and we're just going to wiggle it onto the post. Now, in this case, actually, you may have to heat I haven't even done this actually on the figure. I did it on the other Predalien. See how small that hole is and see how large that peg is? You may even have to force this to get this on right away, or even, again, soften the foot in some hot water. Yeah, I haven't done it yet on this figure. I'm going to have to do that a little bit later on. Yeah, I would definitely recommend using the display stand. It's there after all, and it will ensure at least that the Predalien, battle damaged or not, isn't going to fall over on you. And once again, we can slide over the Predalien battle damaged version and bring in equally as cool. I mean, again, I kind of like the one that has the more mandibles sticking out myself. It looks a little bit like the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. But again, whatever the poison is that you pick, both of them actually make for a really interesting, one of the best sculpts we've gotten in. One of those cases where, again, I really hoped that Hiya Toys at some point was going to do a Predalien. And we benefited from the fact that not only did we get one Predalien, but now we have two. Again, whether you prefer to have a clean version of Predalien or the battle-damaged, blood-stained Predalien. In either case, really good-looking figures from Hiya Toys. Depending on how you're planning to display the Predalien may dictate which Predalien you decide to pick up for your collection. Actually, not all of my Hiya Toys are actually part of dioramas. The ones that I really like just to look at, I usually put them in museum poses. So like the Predalien, the cleaner version that we looked at earlier, I've got two display stands connected together, again, because they included those eye brackets. And I've actually just got a museum standing Predalien on the shelf. In a case, though, like this, because now we've got a battle-damaged version of already a cool-looking figure that I liked the first time around, I think this is welcoming an idea of actually putting this one engaged in battle with the battle-damaged Wolf Predator, a Hiya Toys Exquisite Mini that we will be looking at in an upcoming review. The benefit of them also including these display stands that I've mentioned countless times before, being able to interlock with one another using those eye brackets. Not all of them actually have to be used for displaying a figure. In fact, the ones that I do have at least on display where you've got battling predators and aliens, I've actually used a couple of the display stands just as spacing. So you don't actually have to have them connected together where you've got an alien in one stand, you've got a predator on the other stand. You can actually put a couple of stands in between, so it still makes up for a much larger diorama. And again, that's the thing I really like about the Hiya Toys stuff. Not even just the predators and the aliens that we've been looking at, but all the other things that they've been producing over the years, is that those display stands come rather in handy. Again, for museum posing of those figures, or in a case of the battle-damaged Predalien, one that I'm most definitely going to be putting in a diorama, you can also use them for a much bigger battle scene. Of the two figures that we've looked at, the battle-damaged Predalien and, of course, the cleaner version, if you had the choice and you could only pick up the one, which one would you guys actually pick up for yourself, the cleaner version or the battle-damaged version? Let me know down below in the comments section. And once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Hiya Toys that did provide the sample of the battle-damaged Predalien that we could have a look at in this review. Really, really nice looking figure once again. Just again, a little bit of additional green, but again, you've got the slightly different sculpted mandibles, still makes for a really cool looking figure. If you enjoyed this review, why not hit it with a like? If you're loving the content you're seeing and haven't yet had the chance, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification notification. And also popping up at the very end of this video will be a playlist of all the other Hiya stuff that I've looked at over the years, with all future videos showing up in that very same playlist also. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.